The first use case you think about blockchain is payments, right? So that's the first thing you want to do, is show that you can secure a payment mechanism just like Visa, MasterCard, but much more secure, without middlemen, take away the fees, offers economies of scale. So the more people use it, the cheaper it gets. The way we view the future of value in the long term, 3 to 5 to 10 years, we view layer 1 blockchains will essentially become like the new republics. These will be the new mechanisms where all the value is going to proliferate to. In the future, there will be the layer 1 blockchain, there will be the mining market, there'll be the dApps, and there'll be tokens. So the lower you get in the stack, the lower risk you have, but the lower rewards. The highest risk reward will be on the layer 1 blockchain, because that's where all the value will flow up. But it's highest value, highest risk. We view layer 1 blockchains, which is Bitcoin, Syscoin, Ethereum, as court systems. They need to be combative to the external forces that we don't control, even in the software world. In the real world, like inflation, hyperinflation, wars, these systems need to be secure from that. And this is why we view Bitcoin as the gold standard for security and decentralization. What else does the world need? What else does the world cherish when you have something like Bitcoin? How can we extend that to something else where we can take advantage to build real world utility? This is where Ethereum comes in. For me, Ethereum is a gold standard for flexibility or general computation. We're trying to stick to the gold standards we know the world's going to cherish and develop on, and we put those two concepts together. And this is what Syscoin is.
What's up, people? Hotep Jesus, we back. In case you're not familiar, I am
that Hotep Jesus do. That Hotep Jesus do.
Hope everyone is doing wonderful. I have a great educational presentation lined up for you today. But first, we have to talk about our lovely sponsor, Syscoin. Just want to show you the chart here. This is another one of those Hotep's been told you moments. If you bought when I told you I bought, well, you see the gains, right? You see the gains. You see the gains. This is not financial advice. Syscoin is a sponsor on this channel. Thank you very much, Syscoin, for being the Medici family to Hotep Jesus and supporting me through these treacherous times of the Joe Biden administration. Not to involve Syscoin in politics at all, but amazing project here that has stood the test of time. They've been through the bear cycles of the crypto market. They're still here because they're actually innovating. They're actually creating a cryptocurrency that has real life utility, and they're improving upon this. Merge mining, genius. I mean, what are you going to do with all those other hashes that are out there? Got to do something with them, right? Genius. Smart contracts, Ethereum, genius. You can build mini apps inside these smart contracts and executables and all sorts of cool things that I don't want to get too deep into because, frankly, I'm not an expert on it. But I strongly suggest people check out this Syscoin project. And like I said, I have to disclose they are a sponsor of this channel. Now, without further ado, we are going to dive right into our subject matter for today. This is from my work, The Patriot Report, Unmasking the Conspiracy of Money and War, because where there is war, there is usually money afoot. Here you will see the table of contents. Starts off with a bit of a fictional tale to sort of warm you guys up before we dive into the nonfiction of things. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to hop right to this chapter. The Second Bank of the United States. And we're going to walk you through some history here of our beautiful nation, the United States of America. So this is the Second Bank of the United States presentation in relation to the War of 1812, sourced and cited. It says here, war has generally had a grave and fateful consequences for the American monetary and financial system. I'm going to say that again. War has generally had grave and fateful consequences for the American monetary and financial system. And pretty much any system, resources need to be spent when you go to war. And this is quoted from Murray Rothbard in his title, A History of Money and Banking in the United States, the War of 1812 and its Aftermath. I did a ton of research when I wrote my book, and I had to read a lot of books to really educate myself on monetary policy and history of money before I wrote the book. I wanted to understand money before I actually wrote the book. I didn't just want to include a bunch of facts that I didn't understand, so I had to read this documentation. So it continues here in my book. It says the official reason for the War of 1812 was due to the trade restrictions and American expansionism out west. Official in quotes. It says here, trade restrictions began during the Napoleonic Wars, which was fought between France and Britain. America, as a neutral party, was affected by trade restrictions imposed by both Britain, Orders in Council, and France, Milan and Berlin Decrees. America imposed its own trade restrictions like the Embargo Act of 1807 and the Non-Intercourse Act of 1809, which mainly hurt the American economy. Prices of imported commodities rose on average of 70% between 1811 and 1815. Now, in this book, I don't dive deeply into the Embargo Acts or the Non-Intercourse Act at all. I included those there for your own inquisition and for your own studies. And I suggest diving into that stuff and seeing what you can pull out of that. The book is available at bryansharp.co, bryansharpe.co, or Amazon, whatever suits your desire. So there's 2 days before the United States declared war on the British. The Orders in Council was repealed on June 16th, 1812. Now pay attention here. It says when the British finally received news of the declaration of war, they decided to wait to see how the U.S. would respond to the repeal. However, the war hawks in the U.S. decided to wage war on the British colony, Canada, anyway. And I'll include this excerpt here from Harvard President Joseph Willard. He made a statement on July 4th, 1812, and he says, there is sufficient evidence that a number of societies of the Illuminati have been established in this land. They are doubtless striving to secretly undermine all our ancient institutions, civil and sacred. These societies are clearly leagued with those of the same order in Europe. The enemies of all order are seeking our ruin. Should infidelity generally prevail, our independence would fall, of course. Our Republican government would be annihilated. So I want to stop right there and do some extrapolation. Shout out to David Ziantara for the $5 super chat. If you guys want to super chat, support the channel, please do. Or $ Cash App, $ Hotep Jesus on Cash App. Definitely appreciate you supporting this channel as we get bigger, better, badder. So what is he saying here? He's basically saying, if the money ain't free, the people ain't free. That's Hotep Jesus quote, by the way. If the money ain't free, the people ain't free. So today, people believe that we have some sort of independence. But according to Harvard President, July 4th, 1812, Joseph Willard, If our ancient institutions are undermined, then, well, our independence would fall, of course, and our Republican government would be annihilated. So let's continue here. It says the banking industry was so poorly managed that in August of 1814, specie payments were suspended, meaning that the ability to cash in your fiat for specie was not honored by the banks, but yet the banks were still allowed to require their loans to be paid in specie being hard assets like gold, silver, or copper. So basically, this is a raw deal. Hoodwinked, bamboozled. The banks are telling you, look, you got to pay me in gold, but I ain't got to pay you in gold. So this is not exactly a reciprocated transaction here. Obviously, this caused an explosion in bank launches, and in only 1 year, the number of banks rose from 208 and 246 to 246. Of course, a bunch of banks would hop in on this. This is a great opportunity. I mean, who wouldn't want to be on the bank side of things with this type of deal? Like, I can receive gold, but I don't have to pay it out? What? Absolutely. Any thirsty capitalist would do that. It is important to include Murray Rothbard's statement on free banking to understand the execrable boodle perpetuated by the banksters and their government cronies. I always have trouble saying the word execrable. I'm not even going to try anymore. I'm sorry. Free banking can only refer to a system in which banks are treated as any other business, and that therefore failure to obey contractual obligations, in this case prompt redemption of notes and deposits in specie, must incur immediate insolvency and liquidation. Burdened by the tradition of allowing general suspensions that arose in the United States in 1814, the pre-Civil War banking system, despite strong elements of competition, when not saddled with a central bank, must rather be termed, in the phrase of one economist, as decentralization without freedom. So this word freedom pops up here. And again, like I said, if the money ain't free, the people ain't free. I'm not going to extrapolate what's happening here. I think you guys can figure that out, but it'll become clear on this next part. So Murray Rothbard points to Vera C. Smith's definition of free banking as written in his work, The Rationale of Central Banking, which I will include here so nothing gets lost in translation. And this is going to basically extrapolate and explain what we said. And it says here, a regime where no issuing banks are allowed to set up in the same way as any other type of business enterprise so long as they comply with the general company law. The requirement for their establishment is not special conditional authorization from a government authority, but the ability to raise sufficient capital. Wait, I'm sorry. I just clicked the wrong thing. I'm sorry. But their ability to raise sufficient capital and public confidence. That's a big one right there because it's kind of hard to measure. And public confidence to gain acceptance for their notes and ensure the profitability of the undertaking. Under such a system, all banks would not only be allowed the same rights, but would also be subjected to the same responsibilities as other business enterprises. Now, for some of us, we were old enough to remember the 2008 housing crisis. So I want you to keep that in mind as I read. If they failed to meet their obligations, they would be declared bankrupt and put into liquidation, and their assets used to meet the claims of their creditors, in which case the shareholders would lose the whole or part of their capital, and the penalty for failure would be paid, at least for the most part, by those responsible for the policy of the bank. Common sense, right? Notes issued under the system would be promises to pay, and such obligations must be met on demand in the generally accepted medium, which we will assume to be gold. No bank would have the right to call on the government or any other institution for special help in time of need. This is important. No bank would have the right to call on the government or any other institution for special help in time of need. Now he says special institution, right? special institution. Obviously, that could be something still tied to government. So it's not the government, but it could be tied to government. Okay. In 2008 housing crisis, what happened? Banks got bailed out. People got sold out. I forget how the phrase went at Occupy Wall Street, but it was crazy. I was there at Zuccotti Park on the ground. Wonderful experience. Anyway, I'll continue. A general abandonment of the gold standard is inconceivable under these conditions. And with a strict interpretation of the bankruptcy laws, any bank suspending payments would at once be put into the hands of a receiver. I don't think I got to explain that. Let's continue. As you can see from the work of Smith and Rothbard, the U.S. banking system was operating spuriously and in violation of freedom. Let's continue. Says here, in 1816, $60 million was printed out of thin air with the creation of the Second Bank of the United States to fund the debt of the War of 1812. Now, like I told you before, war is going to create debt. Rothbard argues that there are two ways out of this debt. One was the freedom route, where the government would force banks to honor the redemption of the banknotes for specie and or liquidation of all assets to accommodate the lack of specie and reserve, eliminating the inflation problem. The other was to create yet another central bank. So yes, if you don't have enough then you should have to liquidate your assets. Could be building, could be livestock, it could be land, whatever it may be. But you got to sell your stuff, bro. So let's continue. It says opposition to the fiat system was hardly exclusive to Jefferson. So we have a member of the United States House of Representatives out of New Hampshire, Mr. Daniel Webster, which I believe in this case was a hero. He suggested that the government should only accept specie or banknotes backed by specie for payment of debts or taxes after February 20th, 1817, but the powers that be decided otherwise. So there's somebody in Congress saying, look, we need to operate the bank in a very honest manner, such as Vera C. Smith was talking about, such as Rothbard was talking about. However, that would not come about. The creation of the Second Bank of the United States can possibly be called a conspiracy. We must call into question the relationship between Alexander James Dallas, write that name down, this is for your studies, between Alexander James Dallas, who was Secretary Treasury at the time, and Stephen Girard. Girard, or Gerard, was the largest stockholder in the first bank of the United States. I have another presentation here where we talk about the first bank of the United States, so refer back to that one if you need a refresher. And a whale invested in the debt incurred by the War of 1812. So this guy Gerard funded the first bank of the United States of America, at least partly, and he invested in the War of 1812. So it says here, of the $28 million outstanding for the formation of the Second Bank of the U.S., Gerard accounted for $3 million, and he served on the board of directors. He obviously had a financial interest in the formation of this bank, but he was not the sole architect of this lobbying scheme. The other two main figures were David Parrish and John Jacob Astor. John Jacob Astor, some of you may recognize that name. He died on its sinking of the Titanic with a net worth equivalent to about $2.3 billion, according to whatever the dollar is worth in 2019. It's a really rich guy. Okay. Gerard's involvement in the formation of the Second Bank is not to be understated. Gerard was a most important influence in the bank's early history. On August 15th, 1814, Astor writes to Gerard, "There is no doubt that the Congress will, in the early part of the session, take up the National Bank, which now appears to have been indispensable. Its capital will be $30 million and its notes not tender, except in payments to the government. But the bank must be protected from paying specie until after the war, ... Several behind the scenes meetings occurred in secrecy, one of them between Dallas and Girard on October 2nd, another between Dallas and Parrish, and another between Parrish and Astor in New York, and another between Parrish and Dallas in Washington, as noted in the Journal of Economic History, as cited in the footnotes. Please note that Dallas would take office as Secretary of Treasury only 4 days later on October 6th. So this guy is about to walk into the position of Secretary of Treasury, and he's meeting with these officials. To make the possible conspiracy clear, these were private investors meeting in secret with a soon-to-be government official on the topic of installing a central bank to control the nation's money. Was it in the best interest of these banksters for the U.S. to enter into a war so they could scheme profits from the debt incurred by the government? ? So basically the question I'm asking there is, was the War of 1812 sort of incited or gaslit so that money could be made and a bank could be created? It's a question. It's just a question. On this national bank, our hero once again, Daniel Webster said, a project calculated only for the benefit of the holders of the stock issued since the war. Only for the benefit of the holders of the stock. So he's basically saying this bank is being created, but the only people that are going to benefit are the people who started this bank, the banksters. On the subject of this national bank, Delaware Senator William H. Wells, he states, ostensibly for the purpose of correcting the diseased state of our paper currency by restraining and curtailing the overissue of bank paper, and yet it came prepared to inflict upon us the same evil, being itself nothing more than simply a paper-making machine. Money printer go burr. So you can see here in the 1800s, the early 1800s, they're dealing with the same problem we are dealing with today. Let's continue. After only a year and a half, the National Bank had a reserve ratio of 0.11. It's approximately 11% of specie could actually cover the notes that they printed. 11%. Again, illustrating the negligence of keeping a balance between paper money and specie. The estimated total money supply rose 40.7%. That's from 67.3 million to 94.7 million in only 2 years. Pennsylvania State Senator Condi Raggett, I think I say his name, wrote to the British political economist David Ricardo. And he said, you state in your letter that you find it difficult to comprehend why persons who had a right to demand coin from the banks in payment for the notes so long forbore to exercise it. This no doubt appears paradoxical to one who resides in a country where an act of parliament was necessary to protect a bank, but the difficulty is easily solved. The whole of our population are either stockholders of a bank or in debt to them. Somebody in the chat said they watched a bank ad before they watched this. Hilarious. He says, the whole of our population are either stockholders of a bank or are in debt to them. It is not the interest of the first to press the banks and the rest are afraid. He says, it is not the interest of the first to press the banks and the rest are afraid. This is the whole secret. An independent man who was neither stockholder or debtor, who would have ventured to compel banks to do justice, would have been persecuted as an enemy of society. Thomas Jefferson issued another warning, this time in a letter to John Taylor. He says, I believe that banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies. Already they have raised up a money aristocracy that has set the government at defiance. The issuing power should be taken from the banks and restored to the government, to whom it properly belongs. End chapter. So what do we learn here? Well, we learn that there's two ways to operate your money supply. Either the government can be in charge of creating and issuing fiat notes and regulating the expansion or the reduction of the total amount of notes based upon whatever reserve asset you have. Now, in the early days, reserve assets was often land. You could back your currency based upon acreage, or I believe back then they called them hectares. I can't remember. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sure many of you know better than me. Or you can broker out the responsibility. You can broker out the responsibility to private interests. Now, if you brokered out to private interests, it's not exactly a bad idea. I'm speculating. However, you'd have to be really tight on the contracts. You have to be very explicit on the contracts. And in that case, you probably might want to just issue it yourself. I mean, if the government does it, they're probably going to hire the same people to come into government and have them advise on monetary policy and economic policy anyway. So it might make sense to broker it out. However, they would have to be under the jurisdiction of Congress, and Congress would have to have a tight leash on them, and they would have to force them to operate just like any other corporation would, where if you default on your payments, well, guess what? You're out of business and we seize your assets. However, that's not what happened here. As you can see, that they weren't forced to keep a 1-to-1 ratio of specie to fiat. And, as you'll see in my next presentation, you'll see what happened to that bank and that currency. Another thing I'd like to talk about is fiat. I think fiat gets a very bad name. Many people say that fiat is not the way and fiat is bad. And I'm like, well, I think they're talking about modern fiat and how fiat is operated today under the jurisdiction of the Federal Reserve Bank. But fiat, I believe, especially with the explosive population that we have now, is a good way to allow people to exchange goods, services, and resources. It's just not quite efficient to walk around with a barrel of gold or a wheelbarrow of gold to make payments. It's going to be heavy. It's probably not safe. You got this gold jingling around in your pocket, or you got some carriage behind you, or today some Brinks truck is carrying around your wallet. It's probably not the safest way. However, you could say the equivalent of gold is, backed by this piece of paper that is worth $100 or whatever it may be, $500, whatever. I also find that it's interesting that the coins that we use today don't have the same amount of precious metals as they had previously. As some of you remember, a silver dollar was called a silver dollar because, well, the dollar was made out of silver and they weighted it to a certain specification, which would be equivalent to whatever the dollar was at that time. Also remember that copper at one point was a very popular means of money. So you had copper, you had silver, and you had gold. Gold actually wasn't that popular. I believe, according to my studies, if my memory does not fail me, copper was very popular, especially, I believe, in South America and the southern states. That would be like Texas today, which was technically Mexico then. And silver was very popular. Silver was used a lot in the United States of America. And we'll go into why silver was sort of phased out and gold phased in, et cetera, but even England, we'll find out later, was jealous of the amount of silver that circulated in the money economy of the United States. So no, I don't believe fiat is necessarily evil. I believe that not conducting a sound money scheme as laid out by Vera C. Smith, as laid out by Adam Smith, author of The Wealth of Nations, and as purported by Murray Rothbard. Many of these documents that I've cited can be found for free on the Mises. I think it's Mises.org. If you just type in Mises, you'll find their website. Ton of information there. I spent over 2 years just reading, a good amount of, I wouldn't say the majority, because I definitely didn't read the majority. There's thousands of books on that site. But I spent a good amount of time reading through a lot of that material, and I suggest you guys go check out Mises. Basically, what my book does, The Patriot Report, Unmasking the Conspiracy of Money and War, this is the Cliff Notes. I basically gave you the Cliff Notes, and, hopefully there's no trademark worries there of using the word Cliff Notes. It's just a comparison. I am not sponsored and no dealings with the company that makes Cliff Notes. But this is your short version of the history of banking in the United States as it pertains to war. Now, I don't dive into the details of war, except we do dive into some of the conspiracy details in the latter part of the book, where we talk about World War I and World War II, and a little bit of the Civil War, etc., etc. The real reason for slaves being freed, because most people didn't get that right. And that presentation is also on the Patriot Report playlist here on the channel. So you can go check that out if you are impatient and you want to dive into that. There's plenty of videos here for that. So I suggest you go check that out. But if you get my book, you can basically get the Cliff Notes or the shortened version. And basically what it's going to do, it's going to give you, like I said, there's citations and sources that show you exactly where to find this information. And I uncovered this information. Also, I pulled primary sources. So when I read something in these documents and they cited a congressional hearing, well, I went to basically Congress's website. And because these were older, I had to go to something called the congressionalglobe.gov. I forget the website. It's cited in my book. And I had to read through the actual verbiage in the hearings. And I was like, I want to find exactly what he said and where he said it. So I didn't pull it from somebody else's book. I looked at the congressional record. I read through the hearings and what each congressman said, so I can see who's the shill, who's the guy that's like covering for the bankers, and who's the guy that's like on the side of the people. And this also helps us to today, because you can start seeing, who's on our side and who's not, as it pertains to congressmen and as it pertains to people in the Supreme Court. Because as we go through some other presentations later on, we're going to cite Supreme Court justices like Justice Brennan and Justice Thurgood Marshall, who have made some great remarks regarding the Fourth Amendment. But like I said, I pulled this stuff straight from congressional documentation, straight from Congress, where the congressmen are saying, like, this is basically a conspiracy. So this isn't, some... they like to paint Alex Jones as some quack. There's no quackery in my book. This is all straight from primary sources. As you can see, I am citing people who were there and what they had to say about these machinations of the banksters. I'm going to go ahead and check out the chat. And I'll spend some time to get these timestamps together. But this is your U.S. history lesson of the day, straight from my book, The Patriot Report, Unmasking the Conspiracy of Money and War. And yeah. Let's see here. What up, Jay Pylon, Jabari Judah, David, Jimmy Das, Hotep? What up, man? What are the links between BRIC countries and gold? First of all, the economic development of the bloc may undermine the U.S. dollar, supporting the yellow metal. Some course forecasts even argue that they may relatively soon become dominant economic powers capable of to create alternative reserve currency to the greenback and challenge the American dominance. Yeah, I'm definitely want to keep an eye on the BRIC situation. Nice puts HJ in the background. Hits like all ears. That Hotep Jesus dude was nice seeing you with the ladies. Ha ha ha. They are fun. Yeah, shout out to the Simcast. I was on the Simcast yesterday. It was super dope, super fun. Check those ladies out. Chrissy Mayer's doing big things out here. Hotep Dutch, what up, bro? Hotep Dutch, hit me up, man. Bankers are getting trained in the new quantum financial system, which is going to take about 6 months to complete. Training since the QFSB being so complex. Interesting. I like when you guys teach me. It's only a bad idea if the government doesn't follow through with them insolvencies, you know? Yes, they have to follow through with the insolvencies. Leo Zachary said, you don't need fiat currency. Paper money started as a receipt for gold or silver coins. Well, let's dive into that. Why don't we need a fiat currency? Why would you say, like we know paper money started as a receipt for gold. That's what this presentation did cover. But why do you say we don't need a fiat currency? I don't know what other mechanism would be better to handle transactions. I think today, obviously, we have the technology of cryptocurrency. But if you're not using something like Monero, a lot of that stuff is public blockchain and you got to pay taxes on it. Right. And I believe that many people operate in this world, especially ones with all cash businesses. Well, I don't know if that's tax evasion, but it could be tax avoidance. But I sort of like having physical cash because it doesn't allow people to snoop on you. And Joe Biden actually has a cryptocurrency commission that he's put into place. I wrote an article on that on menoforder.com, and we covered that. And yeah, well, they're going to try to figure out some sort of way to track your financial transactions using, your cryptocurrency transactions. And obviously, with their new IRS task force, force you to pay taxes. Leo Zachary says he's answering my question now. He says fiat currency basically gives whoever is in power unlimited power to say money is whatever they want. We can exchange goods without the state. Well, certainly, you certainly could do that. You don't exactly have to use the currency created by the government. You know, if you and your people had your own community, you could create your own currency. And if it was a paper currency, you would be creating fiat. I don't know if you would want to make those transactions in gold. It's just not safe to do so. So I'm not clear as to what Leo here is trying to get at. But I think we just sort of disagree on this. I think we're going to have to agree to disagree. I think fiat is one of those necessary evils where it makes life easier. But in the wrong hands, it is exactly what you said. It does give people the power to tell people what money is. Yeah. But I think if we can put something in writing by a group of educated individuals and say, hey, if this thing is going to, it's just contracts, right? You just put the contract down and say, hey, look, this is the contract. It's got to be 1-to-1. If it's not 1-to-1, we're going to force your bank into solvency, right? And you're going to have to dissolve the entity and fork over your assets. It's that simple. Hotel Dutch said the camera is crisp. Thanks, bro. Just copped a new camera. I'm reinvesting into this stuff. Somebody said time to audit Fort Knox. Yeah, wait until I go into the whole conspiracy around gold and the gold standard. Oh man, it might make you sick to your stomach when you find out what happened to all the gold. Diver Down Seattle said fiat is good because legit, not counterfeit. it's now bad only because it's not backed by anything. It can't be exchanged for anything backing it. Yeah, exactly it. Leo said central bank crypto dollars will give people in power total control over money supply. This currency will have an expiration date. Not only will it have an expiration date, and they have the ability to just delete money straight out of your wallet, your virtual wallet. This is called the CBDC, central bank digital currency, is what Leo is referring to. And yeah, that's not even fiat. That's just it's just a new evil. Leo says, I hear what you're saying. We don't disagree. I just mean crypto in the hands of the state is bad. Yeah. Yes. When they have the new crypto, that CBDC, which I think I can bring this up on the screen. Let's see if I can find it. This is going to be here. We're going to go. Yeah, here it is. I'll put this on the screen for you right now. And they always do this to our wonderful third world nations. So you see here, let me click on the news tab and see if we can pull up a news article about this. So it's nothing really new. Okay, so here's one here. This is from Axios. Jamaica's central bank steps towards CBDC. So you'll see here the Central Bank of Jamaica is one step closer to issuing a digital currency backed by the state to be used as local legal tender. So the CBDC is, I believe it's official now in Jamaica, or is, okay, so here's this next one. In historic move, Jamaica makes CBDC akin to cash. Jamaica Senate authorized the Bank of Jamaica to issue Jamdex, which is launching later this month as legal tender. So they've already issued the CBDC in Jamaica, my dad's home country. So this stuff is coming. It's coming. It's here. As you can see, it's already in a foreign country. So yeah, we're putting this information out there. We're warning people. I'm not a big fan of the CBDC. I don't know how we stop it. I've made suggestions and pleas to the crypto community that we create a board of attorneys and put a stop to this. It's pretty creepy, but this is the digital currency that Alex Jones, frankly, has been warning us about. That is going to, you think the fiat is bad? Wait till you see this CBDC and what they can do with that. And also, I'll give you reference to another article here, which was put on my desk by Cyprian. Oh snap! It's actually trending. Wouldn't you? Wow, that's crazy. It's trending on our site right now. I don't know why. I'll have to do some research and look at our Google Analytics, but it's now #1. I hadn't put this out there, but maybe people are looking for this. But we covered this a while back, and this is Project Hamilton, Bitcoin's evil brother. And this article right here, I'll post it in the chat so you guys can go read it. But this is about the central bank and the central bank digital currency that they want to push out. And it's coming. It's frankly in the works. It's in the works. And everyone should be frightful. But if you want to learn about this is a great, excellent start. So this is a 5-minute read. It's going to have links. It's going to have references. And then there's also going to be an interview here. I did with Cyprian. Sorry for the loud noise. Watch this interview. It's an hour 33 minutes long. Watch it. And then there's also a video here with Cyprian again. Watch that too. So basically, honestly, I would say watch this one first with Cyprian where he explains it, and then watch the one where I cross-examine him to really dive into the complexities of it all. And that's just education you need to pass along to your friends and family and educate yourself on. It's basically a warning. With that said, I am
That Hotep Jesus dude.
And I appreciate everyone for tuning in. Hotep and build.